Now, so far, our queries have been fairly simple because the where clause is basically just looking at one column. And now we're going to create a little more complicated queries using where clause that look for more than one thing. And when you have a where clause that's looking for multiple things, you are really limiting the number of rows that are going to be returned. So we are going to enter task number 3, moving our closing comment down. And our first scenario is the boss wants us to modify the query shown below to display rows that have an invoice date between January 1st and January 31st, 2020. So we're going to actually copy this, paste it. And if we run it right now, which we'll do, it's showing us everything. So you'll notice that we have dates in 2019, and then we have dates in 2020. But really, all we're interested in is January 1st through January 31st. So we're going to insert a where clause. And what we're checking is invoice date. And we're looking for a date range. So we're going to use between. And then for dates, when you enter them, you have to enter them as a string. So you have to enter them in single quotes, and you have to format them correctly. So if we look at how the date is displayed here, you can see it's the century year dash month dash day. So in single quotes, we're going to just say 2020 dash 01 dash 01 and single quotes 2020 dash 01 is our month dash 31. Okay, so this is going to limit what we see. So we're going to go ahead and run it. And now if we look, the only rows we should see should have an invoice date between January 1st and January 31st. And let's take our closing comment and move it down. And our next scenario. The boss wants us to modify the query we just created to display the balance due. And that is a calculation. It will be the invoice total minus the payment total minus the credit total. And for our filter, for our where clause, they would like us to show the invoices that have a balance due greater than 0. And they also want us to sort by balance due in descending order. So first step is to copy the existing query. And let's see, they want us to modify the query to display balance due. So we need to add balance due to the end of this. And I'm going to put in a comma, and we said balance due is a calculation. And we're using invoices. So if we did not know what the columns were called, okay, we would expand invoices and expand the columns, and we would look for the invoice total, payment total, and credit total, kind of right here in a row. So we're going to put in the equation, invoice total minus payment total minus credit total. Okay, so that's our equation. And then to give the column a nice little heading, we're going to add an alias. And we're going to call it balance due. And because this is 2 words, I need to put it in single quotes. Okay, and that is the column that they want. Now, we need to change our where clause to only display balance due greater than 0. And we also want to sort by balance due. So a little quirk in SQL is that we can sort by an alias. Okay, so we can change order by to balance due. That's not a problem. Another little quirk is that we cannot use an alias in a where clause. We have to actually use the equation instead. So I'm going to highlight this equation and I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to paste that right over invoice date. Going to get rid of the end of this and add greater than 0. Okay, so kind of the rules for an alias are that you can use them in order by, but you cannot use them in a where clause. You have to actually put the equation in there. So this is what we need. This is what they're asking for. Let's see, we do need to add one more thing to order by because they want that in descending order. So let's go ahead and execute. And balance due is sorted from the most to the least. And so you can see that we are giving them the information that they want. So let us take our closing comment and move it down. And we have one more scenario. So we have to modify the last filter. So that means we're going to copy and paste this again. And so we're modifying the where clause. And we're only going to display rows that have an invoice date greater than January 1st and either an invoice total greater than 500 or a balance due greater than 0. So all of them need to have the invoice date greater than January 1st. Okay, so we're going to add in here invoice date greater than single quotes 2020-01-01. Oops, single quote. Okay, they all have to have that. And they either need an invoice total than 500, greater than 500 or balance due greater than 0. So we're going to put this in parentheses because they need one or the other. And we have the balance due part. So what we need to add is invoice total greater than 500 or that little equation for balance due greater than 0. So this is going to be true for all of the rows. And then the rows are either going to have invoice total greater than 500 or a balance due greater than 0. And we will go ahead and run this. So first, let's check the date. So all of them should be greater than January 1st, and they are. And then let's check the second part. So we said either the invoice total had to be bigger than 500 or the balance due had to be greater than 0. So let's look for an invoice total that is less than 500 right here. Okay, balance due is greater than 0. Okay, so every time where we have an invoice total that is less than 500, we have a balance due. And then you'll see that we do have some balance dues that are 0, but we have invoice totals there. So that is why they were selected. Or at least that's why those rows are displayed. So that is working as well. So let's move closing comment down. And we are going to save our changes.